Hello, this is Martin and we're finally back with that promised video. In this one we're going to be looking at a couple of ways of using progress bars. So I'll be right back with this video after these words. See you in a moment. Hello, this is Martin and welcome to the next video in my series in which we are looking at getting started with OpenInsight 10. And this is the video that I've been promising you for a while. We're going to be looking at using the progress bar to keep our users informed of long processes. I just hope that it's been worth the wait. This video is going to be a little bit unusual. I'm going to split it into two parts. The second half is going to be looking at creating a progress bar using the tools and all the different options that are available to you. The first half is going to be using the progress bar tool in the Forms Designer to drop a progress bar on there and then manipulate that in code, so we don't predefine the progress bar. It's all done the hard way. And forgive me, I'm not going to be doing that in the clinic application for two reasons. One, this is quite complex and I'm not very technical, and secondly, it doesn't really fit with the data sets. You need large amounts of data or large processes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the contact manager that I use at Revelation Software Limited. So we'll open that up in development mode, and I would suggest that you just sit back for the next couple of minutes and watch this, because obviously there's nothing to follow through. So if you want to pause the video and grab a cup of coffee, feel free. So once we've launched our copy of OpenInsight, then we can do a Control and L to launch the application. So if I was just going to run this from like a runtime shortcut, then it would launch this window. The user is then prompted to confirm that they're the registered licensee, and when they do that, OpenInsight will then start to populate these data grids in the application. We'll look at those in a moment. And as it's populating the data, after it's gone through every record, it's updating the progress bar to work its way through. Now, I'm not working with huge data sets here, so it doesn't matter too much that I'm updating the progress bar after every record. If you're working with hundreds of thousands of rows or millions of rows of data, then you may well want to update the progress bar every 50, 100, 1,000, whatever number of records makes sense to you, because it does slow down the process. Now, I introduced this progress bar idea into here more of a concept and to learn how to do it rather than it being sort of functional, because I don't necessarily need to preload the data grids for this application, because I've got a filter in there, which we'll look at in a moment. But again, this is just a nice way of showing how nice the progress bar is and how informative it can be. So the communications is a lot of data in this particular table. It's quite a few records. So I'm just going to leave that to run to the end, and then I'll be back with you in just a moment. Okay, so when it's finished, it basically launches the application, which is an MDI frame, and all the data grids are invisible. And to make them visible, you just click on whichever of the buttons that you want. So in this instance, I'll launch the companies, and then that returns in all of the data. So these are all of the companies that I've got in the contact manager. I apologize that it's blurred out. This is real data, so for data protection reasons, obviously I've got that blurred out. But what we can do is on the top here, if we go into the Find dialog and I put Revelation Software and Alpha Limited, let's get that right, get my fingers working, and then we just do a search, then it brings in the data for that particular filter. And very often I'm bringing in large numbers of companies and things that I'm working with, and I can double click, and then that will give me the information for Revelation Software Limited. So all very simple, don't necessarily need the data grids to be loaded as part of the application launch, but it's just something that I happen to like, and just something that I do. Okay, so let's have a look and see how all that's put together. So it starts with the app entry form. So on the app entry form, we have the button that the user clicks, and on there I have two events. So we have a click event, which is basically going to close this window after this script has run. And the script simply says to set the text on the button login control. So that's this control here, the button login control. Set that to loading data, please wait. We then make the P bar loading control visible, and then we make the button login invisible. Now the P bar loading control, if I just go to the select the control, so P bar loading is very simply a progress bar. So this control here, literally just dragged and dropped onto the form, and surprisingly there's no events whatsoever for that. We're going to drive all of that from within the code. And then finally we start the MP MDI main window. So let's go and have a look at the MDI main window, and on the events for that particular window we've got a script for the create event, and it does a number of different things. So we set a randomizer for the background image and a few other bits and pieces in here, but the important lines are these lines here where we are loading each of the grids. So the first thing we do is on the button login for our app entry window. So again, back to this one here, if we go to the click on the top there, I think it's button, was it button login? Yep. So that particular button there, it changes from confirm you are the registered licensee, and it changes the text to loading company data. And then when we go on to load the contacts data, it changes it to loading contacts data, etc. And then we just set the company's grid to be invisible, because this is an MDI frame. So we start the window, which gives us the grid, etc., etc. So if we then look at the company's window, which has the grid on it, on the events in here we have a create event, and again we've got some other information that's a bit irrelevant, but this section here is the important bit. So what we do is we open up the database for the record for the companies, and we go through that and we pull out all of the records. And before we start pulling out all of the records, we initialize the progress bar. So we set PRB ID to the progress bar, and we set the property on there for the range, and the range is 1 to the rec count. Now we've got the rec count here, which is the number of records in the database that we're going to be reading. And then we set the text to be loading company's data %p %complete. So it's going to be loading company's data and then the percentage that we have completed. We then go through and bring in our first record, and then once we brought in the first record, we then set the value of PRB ID to Y, which is 1, and then obviously that will update the progress bar and to give us our percentage. And obviously we need to increase Y by 1, so the next time it's record 2, 3, 4, but it's not actually records, it's a percentage, remember. So it's 1%, 2%, 3% right the way through. And that's basically all we are doing. So all of that code enables us, when we run our application, so if I come back to here and I do a Control and L, we click the button, it gives us our progress bar, it tells us which data grid is being loaded, and it tells us what percentage of that data grid has thus been loaded. So that way is using the Forms Designer with the progress bar control and then code to drive it. Okay, back into our clinic application, and in here we will create the progress bar using the toolset. So from our start screen, if we go new, Windows UI Tools, we want a message box and OK. And for our window title, we'll have loading data grids. For the main title, we'll have running the initial load of the data grids. And then for the text, I'll copy that in. Please wait whilst the application's data grids are loaded with data from the database, blah, 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 blah. I'd like the main title to be red. So for the main title for colour, I'm going to change that to be maroon. I'm quite happy for all of the other bits and pieces, I think. Won't go with an icon for the moment. Happy with the font. We'll go centre of window and frame is fixed, and I'm going to leave the width and the height as they are for the moment. So I'm okay with everything there. The type, we want to change that to progress bar because it's a progress bar that we're going to be working on, and then that gives us our special properties for our progress bar. Suppressing the message display would be a little bit irrelevant really, because it would stop displaying all the message and the progress bar and everything else, so ignore that one for the moment. And if I just test run this as it is at the moment, then you see that we just get a progress bar with a big green line and not a lot else. So what we need to do first of all to actually get it to run is to tell OpenInsight how many cycles, how many times we'd like it to run through the progress. So we'll go 1. Also the width of the pixels, so we'll go 500, so it's going to make it 500 wide, and we're going to do this in single steps, and we'll have a start value of 1 and the range will be 1 to 500. So if we now test run that, we now get a blocked progress bar running across, and that all looks quite nice. However, we can do a number of other things in here, as in we can turn it on, the marquee on, which will give us a different view. What that's going to do is it's going to have a marquee that will run across, and then it's going to start again and it will run across. Now that's useful if you haven't really got any control over the range. So this is like an unknown process, it's going to take some time. You can just leave that scrolling through until such time as the process finishes, and that marquee will just go around and around and around. You can also set the translucency so that the window underneath will show through slightly, but I'm not going to worry about that. So if we put the marquee back to nothing, that then enables some of these other properties which aren't compatible with marquee, because obviously you don't know what percentage it is. So when we set that to marquee 1, you'll see that the show percent and the decrement is not shown because they're irrelevant. So we'll change that back out. Smooth, basically what that will do is instead of it being blocked, we now get a nice smooth line as it runs across to 100% complete. We can also put a border around it. So if we now test run, we get a border around the block, and that's quite nice. And then the other thing I want to do, which we had in our earlier progress bar, is to do the percentage complete. So again, if we do a test run, we now get our percentage complete, which runs up as the progress bar runs across. Now we can decrement as well if we want to. I'm not going to do that. And we can also set the progress bar to run vertical, and we can put an animation on here. So if I just do vertical and the recycle animation, and I do a test run, then you see the progress bar runs up and we get a little animation. And you can create your own applications as well. Within the system you get the recycle, file copy, file delete, file destroy, move and file properties. Those are all for the XP AVI file, but you can create your own if you want. So I'll just set that to nothing, take the vertical off, turn the show percent back on. Now when we run this at the moment, okay, we're still vertical, or what we've done here is it's not vertical anymore, but we've now lost our width. So when we went vertical we lost the width. So let's put the width back in, and I'll just test run that again. So that's better, but we don't have any buttons. We can't stop it or cancel it. It's just going to basically run until the end, which you might be happy with. But we can put a cancel button and a pause button. We could yield it each cycle, so if you've got multiple cycles you could have a yield part of the way through. And the other thing that we will do is we'll sync it to the taskbar, so when it runs you'll see now the graphic in the taskbar will display. So if we do a test run now, we can now cancel it, and if we do a test run again we can now pause it. Now if we pause it you'll see that we get a yellow coloured bar to show that it's paused rather than green. If it was to error then we would get a red bar. But you can also see over on the taskbar here, if I just set that running again, you can see that we can see the progress running across, and if you pause it, it shows that condition as well. So if this image or this screen was behind something, so let's say our user is working, they're about to run a very long process, now they want to do some email or something, they can still see the progress in the taskbar of that particular process running. So I think that everything is all okay. I quite like the look of that now. The other thing that I want to do is put the quick help on, and the quick help is going to be the loading data grids quick help that we did previously. So if we now do a test run on that and I click help, it will pause the progress and it then gives us some help. And what I will do is I'm just going to close out of there, and what I want to do is test run. I'm then going to do a Control Alt Delete to screen capture that. We'll then run Adobe Photoshop, and we'll go File and New, from the clipboard, Control V. So this gives us our screenshot of our image, screenshot of the progress bar running. So I'll do a File, and we'll do a Save As, and we'll change that to a PNG. We'll locate where our OpenInsight is installed in here, and I want the MP Clinic folder, images, and we'll do a new folder, and this is going to be quick help images, and we'll open that, and this is going to be loading data grids. That'll do for now, so we'll save that away. Okay, that, close down Photoshop. Nope. Now when we're test running and we click on the help button, we wanted to drop an image in here. We didn't have one before. Now the beautiful thing about quick help is the users can actually edit this within the application. So if we click on the add image button here, we get the URL. It's a little bit irrelevant, the URL, but if we click on the button, we can navigate to where our OpenInsight is installed. MP Clinic, images, quick help images, change it from JPEG to PNG, grab our image, open that. The alternative text would be progress bar image. Okay, that, and then that's dropped the image in for us. Now one of the things I'm going to do here is just move this text down, and I don't want it to be purple because if we get an error condition it will be in red, so I'll change that to red. We'll then save that. The progress bar then continues, and just to prove that out, if I do a test run and help, you'll now see that our help window has been updated by the users in real time in our application. Yes, I know I'm in the development environment, but what I've just simulated is exactly what would happen within the runtime or the deployed version, your production system, if you will. Just leave that to run through. So basically now we have got our progress bar with the help, and if I go to the start menu and open up the patients window, then I haven't got a process to link this into. So what I'll do is I'll grab a push button and drop that on there. Go into the events and the click event, and we can call this message by display message. The target is going to be the needs to be the progress bar one, which I haven't actually saved. So if we do a save, and we'll call this mp underscore progress bar underscore data grid, or loading data grids. Okay, that will be fine like that. So okay that. And then if we go into here, then we've got our loading data grids. Okay that, and we'll save and close. And if we now test run that, there is going to be a small issue, because if I hit the button it will actually display the message, but it doesn't actually run the progress bar, because we're going to need to pass in some information about the number of records, you know, the range, if you will. So it's going to run from 1 to 500, or just run it as a marquee. But you can see you're just going to call that like a normal message, and you can have a progress bar displaying whilst your progress runs. So that's pretty much as far as I'm going to go with the progress bar. Like I said, it doesn't really fit this particular application, but I wanted to cover that off whilst we've been talking about the user interface module within OpenInsight 10. So I hope you found it useful, and I will see you again on the next video, which I don't know what I'm going to be covering. Haven't got anything planned, so it'll be back to the drawing board, but I'll see you over the next day or so. Take care. Bye bye.